Radhe Radhe. Today is Saturday, 22nd April, 2023. Happy Akshaya Tritiya to one and all. And here we are for this recap video for our Bhagavad Gita study class from today, which is in our journey of chapter 7. Along with me, here is Mummy.
Radhe Radhe.
I'll go ahead and bring up the screen and talk about the content covered today. So we covered chapter 7, verses 14 and 15, following the quiz questions to recap from last time, chapter 7, verses 11, 12, and 13. We'll now listen to a rendition of chapter 7, verse 14, and continue from there.
Chapter 7, verse 14. Daivi Vesha Gunamayi Mama Maya Duratyaya Mam Eva Ye Prapadyante Mayam Etam Tarantite.
So chapter 7, verse 14, the catchphrase here is surrender to cross. As Sri Krishna says, we've learned that Maya, of course, is one of his divine energies, and it consists of the three modes of nature. We saw that previously. We saw that in a quiz question today as well. So goodness, passion, and ignorance, all of that energy, that Maya, that is very difficult to overcome, but it isn't impossible. And Sri Krishna, as Swamiji says, he emphatically stresses how to overcome Maya. It is through the element of surrendering unto Sri Krishna. So Swamiji, as we explained in the class as well, Swamiji talks about this confusion that people sometimes have about mithya, things that are non-existent. We made a connection to something way back in chapter 2, JKYog, mithya versus asat. Do encourage everybody again to revisit that material. And again here, understand that Sri Krishna says it is his divine energy Maya, and that indeed exists. So now that exists, it's very difficult to overcome. There are certain shlokas that Swamiji provides from the Shvetashvatar Upanishad and the Ramayana, all stating that, Maya is that servant of God. It is performing work for God by creating obstacles for us, but also in turn opportunities to get us from, as we said in the quiz question, bimukh, having our face away from God, instead making it sanmukh, so taking it toward God. Right? So you've seen that hand gesture many, many times by Swamiji as well. Bimukh becoming sanmukh. There is the analogy or example Swamiji often gives that's here in the commentary as well about the dog representing Maya here, guarding the gate or the house, snarling or growling ferociously, but the minute you seek help from the owner, that dog calms down and you can enter the house. That analogy is to represent God. When we surrender to God, as Sri Krishna says, then God comes to our help and Maya's role stops. Maya's role was to take us toward the feet of God. Sri Krishna says, Maya, thank you, your work is done. Now I'll take over. Sri Krishna takes over. And through that element of our surrender, Sri Krishna provides his grace and his shelter. Next up, we'll see chapter 7, verse 15.
Namam dushkritino mudhaha prapadyante naradhamaha mayaya pahrita jnana asuram bhavam ashritaha.
So now chapter 7, verse 15, and next time we'll see chapter 7, verse 16. In each of these verses, Sri Krishna talks about 4 kinds of people. In this one, chapter 7, verse 15, he talks about 4 kinds of people who do not surrender unto him. So if you haven't surrendered, you're on the run. So that is the catchphrase here, on the run, for chapter 7, verse 15, and relatively easy for all of us to understand. Those 4 kinds of people are those who are ignorant, mudhaha. We talked about how mudhaha also comes in Bhaja Govindam early on itself. So people who are ignorant, very important English word, do add that to your dictionaries. We've seen it before as well, bereft of spiritual knowledge. Bereft meaning here forcibly deprived or forcibly robbing oneself of something that is important. So because they are not seeking what that true purpose is, which is God realization and loving God, they certainly do not surrender to God. Second, which Mummy stressed in class, maybe she'll add to that again here, but very important category of those who are following their lower nature. So that's probably prevalent to a lot of us, how we seek the objects of our senses. That creates an inertia for us to put in effort towards spirituality. We talked about that Sanskrit saying, how alasya hi manushyanam sharirasto, laziness being a big enemy and in fact an enemy in ourselves. On the other hand, work is a very good friend and it doesn't lead to downfall. We did relate that to chapter 3, verse 8 as well. So that is over here. If you look at chapter 3, verse 8, performing your prescribed Vedic duties because action is superior to inaction. And by ceasing activities, like if you think just by taking sannyas, that's great, that's good enough, that's not right, because bodily maintenance cannot be taken care of. And that's where we mentioned that Swamiji in the commentary had also presented to us the same alasyahi manushyanam shloka. So chapter 3, verse 8. Back here to chapter 7, verse 15, the third category is of people who have intellect, but it's with pride. That element of pride and ego is more important to them rather than accepting the process of surrender and faith. Having faith in saints, in scriptures, in the Vedas, and learning from there and progressing upward along that path of spirituality. Instead, they'll get into protracted debates or discussions, usually causing a distraction from their own spiritual progress. And finally, of course, the fourth category, easy to see, those with a demonic nature. Asuram, demonic, naturally those are people who are evil and working, as Swamiji says, in a manner that is diametrically opposite to what God's plans are. They try to, in fact, disrupt or thwart God's plans. And that, of course, cannot lead to devotion or surrender. Mummy, I'm going to pass it to you. I think I've covered the word, as I mentioned, bereft in English. I thought that was important for everyone to look at. And now your turn for Sanskrit dictionary additions and any other comments.
Yes. So from verse 14, the important word to learn is prapadyante. This word we have learned in earlier chapters also, but this is a very, very important word. Prapadyante means to surrender. And of course, the essence of these verses is also same, that we need to surrender to God. We need to give up our own pride and ego. It's only when we surrender to God, then God tells Maya that you can leave this soul, because this soul has surrendered to Krishna, and now Krishna's, with his grace, will help this soul to cross over this material world. And from verse 15, let's learn this word, naradhamaha. Naradhamaha means one who lazily follow one's lower nature, because most of us, we fall in this category. You know, we are here at this platform, we are trying to learn spiritual wisdom through Bhagavad Gita. We are following Swamiji's commentary, the book, but still, many times we are fighting with our own laziness, because our senses are seeking other pleasures, and many times lazily we follow that lower nature instead of engaging in true bhakti at all times. So these are the two important words, prapadyante and naradhamaha. If we keep these two words in our mind, then understanding of these two verses will become very easy. That number one, we need to surrender to God so that Maya is away from us and Krishna graces us and gives us his bhakti. Now, when he gives us bhakti, further we have to fight with our naradhamaha, with our laziness, that we stop seeking the pleasure of our senses. Instead, we engage in our higher nature and we engage in true bhakti and purify our mind. With that, over to you, Gagan.
Yeah, indeed. Again, very important, naradhamaha. So not following our lower nature, which also then will take us away from anger, greed, lust, all those other, difficult aspects or vices. So that's how one can slowly uplift or elevate ourselves on that spiritual path. With that, we come towards the end of this recap video. We certainly look forward to seeing you all next time, which is Saturday, 29th April, 2023. Both Bhagavad Gita study in this chapter 7 series, or hopefully also for Bhagavad Gita recitation, covering a lot of interesting verses and content there as well. And so once again, does happen to be Happy Earth Day as well. And of course, as we said, Akshay Tritiya, wishes, auspicious greetings to one and all. We do hope you can take part in later today that Mahamantra Yagna that's taking place with Swamiji. Lots more in store for the weekend and of course on a regular basis. And we did briefly talk about those stories as well, right? The Akshay Patra Mummy mentioned in class, Sri Krishna helping to feed the whole world and saving the Pandavas, and then the story of Sudama as well. Again, lots to do with abundance and wealth in a way, purification of all that, but again, always with that loving devotion toward God. So from my side, thank you. Radhe Radhe.
Yeah, and I hope many of you can join us today through the online participation for Radha Krishna Temple, Mahamantra Yagna by Swamiji, 3 hours non-stop chanting, and on the occasion of Akshay Tritiya. With that, I take your leave. Thank you. Radhe Radhe.